cut in here. So.
Yes, we'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll start back again. You
Yeah.
worked at Masawa, and how did you meet Missy for the first time? What was your first impression?
I got up into Masawa up at Edgar High School. It was brand new principal, first year principal, and so I went out to make sure I got to know all the teachers and went out to meet them in their classrooms. And Missy, we had just hired that summer as a teacher, so I had heard of her reputation. And I had some recommendations, and so when I got up there, looked at the paperwork, and I go, okay, well, we'll go ahead and bring her on. And when I met her, here was this very happy, bubbly lady that was just so glad to see you, and she just makes you feel comfortable when you're talking with her, And she has that way of disarming you, even when you feel odd, out of sorts, even angry. Missy, just a few seconds talking with her can disarm you, and make you feel at ease, comforted. And she may have no clue how to solve your problems, but you'll leave thinking that you've got the way to go because it's got to be better than where you were. So I had a good opportunity of seeing her, and of course I made every effort to be in the classrooms often, especially with the new teachers. We kind of had a mandate that your experienced teachers are good; they should be pretty well ingrained. But you wanna watch your first year teachers and your new teachers, because if something's amiss in their teacher training or they're not fulfilling their obligations as a DoDEA educator, now's the time to help correct them while you still have them early. Never had to worry about that with Missy. She'd be one of those classes where you'd want to come in and you'd maybe pop in for 5-10 minutes. You'd end up staying for 30 or 40. It was just very engaging. And as I told you before, the students, she didn't have a problem with kids being late to her class. They wanted to be there. So back before engagement really became the watchword for education, Missy had it in spades. I mean, it was there. I mean, kids were actively listening, they were participating. She wasn't afraid to let them engage with one another as well. So they were actually learning from one another. So all of these things that, 20 years, 15 years later that we look at, we expect to see in a classroom, she already had it. So it was very impressed. And then the day she came in and said that her husband was retiring from the Army and they had to leave Masawa, I fought like mad. I called all the way up. I even spoke with the director. Is there any way we have an excellent teacher? It makes no sense to let them go. But the only way she could stay, but then she wouldn't pick up any of those benefits that help our teachers survive in an overseas environment. And of course, with her husband out of the military, and then her picking up just a paycheck, which was good, it wasn't enough really to help with the housing or the other sundry items. So she had to leave, and we were desperate. We put some people in the classroom. She finished out the year as best she could, and being distracted with the move, but she was still there late hours, making sure everything was in place. And then she left, and I was left with the task of filling a position. Now, she had also become our SST leader, our student success team. And she took that on, and it became her baby, because she had this caring nature for every kid. Now she could branch off outside the grade level that she had. And when you looked at the SST students, she cared about every single one of them. She had an individual education plan, not special ed, but she had an individualized education plan for each one of those kids in SST. She became the template for how an SST could be run. We actually gave her a period to conduct intervention classes that she taught herself. She coordinated with the community. She communicated with other teachers. She brought in people who could assist. We had we had a student who came in from Thailand and who only spoke Thai. And we gave them a full high school schedule. Missy went out on the community and found somebody who spoke Thai, who had the time that could come off work and come and assist that student during the school day while they were there at school with some of the understanding that student needed. It never would have happened if it hadn't been Missy going out in the community and, you know, pretty much beating the bushes, literally sometimes, and getting some assistance for these kids. She did that for all of our ESL kids, students who had particular needs that were not eligible for special education. They were special to Missy. And so after she left Edgren, we were pretty much decimated. We knew we were not going to be able to get the quality of educator that we had in Missy Gingrich. And then as I was going through the list, the recruit list, because I wanted to still fill that SST and also an instructional position, it was very limited in who could fill that list. There were a couple people out there, and I made some interviews, and I just didn't feel comfortable with them. And I was about ready to make a selection, and I was working with our HR people on recruitment, and they recommended I get an updated list. Just pull an updated list and see if anybody new comes out on the list. So I asked for one. They sent it to me a couple days later. Missy Gingrich's name was on the list. When she had got back to the States, she had applied through DoDEA, and at that time there was no requirement that when a person left the agency that they had to be out for 1 year. So I conducted the interviews. I called Missy up. They were barely unpacking. And I said, "How would you like a job in Misawa?" And she started laughing. "No, you're joking. No. I'm serious. What? Your name was on a list." And so I conducted the interview. We had a panel of people. So to be fair, you know, I wanted to make sure that I could stay out of it as much as possible with just smiling in the background. And when the consensus was that she would be the person that we want, I was just smiling all over. And so she turned right around. She showed up a little bit late because of the departure time and repacking and coming back. So she didn't start the year right on time with everybody. But boy, when she came back, she hit the ground running. And you could just feel the energy at Edgren High School just rose when she walked back into that building and took over her educational slot in the SST. And there was another change that we had for that position as well. Took it in stride and just had a wonderful time. So it was very impressive, and that's the way it was until I left. So,
if you had to go through a list of 5 or 6 one-word things that would describe Miss Gingrich off the top of your head, what would those 5 words, one at a time, would be?
As I think of students, it would be tenacity. She saw what those kids needed and did everything she could to either supply it herself or to find somebody who could. And she spent hours at school doing that. Her husband would bring her dinner while she sat at her desk. So,
No wonder he's such a good cook.
and he was such a good cook. I kind of made sure she had extra work sometimes so I could join him. No, you know, but yeah, he was phenomenal. So her tenacity, her being tenacious was one. The other thing with Missy is that as an educator, it may sound kind of odd, but I've got to respect her integrity. She never compromised her standards. She knew what a good educator could and should be, and she did that. She never cut corners. There were opportunities, as there are with everybody, that she could slide here or fudge a little bit this way. She never did. It was always straightforward, And when she said that she was going to do something, she did it. And if something fell through, she would be the first one to come up and say, Mike, I wasn't able to do this, or it didn't do it didn't occur as I wanted it to. And it was actually because of her, and we had a conversation one time that when I would do teacher recruits, there was always a series of questions I would ask in the interviews that I would do over the phone. And because of a conversation I had with Missy, I went back and I changed one of my questions. And that is, I would always ask a teacher, if words to this effect, if after a unit of instruction, you gave an assessment and you found that 40 to 50% of your kids failed, got D's, just weren't getting it. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them.
Right.
What would you do? And so the responses I would get from a lot of people, and sadly, I would get those that were of a certain mentality. Well, I would hope that they could catch up later on, or I would give them more work to help them catch up. You had different answers. One that was, yeah. Either was, I would give them more work to help them, or I actually had one person tell me that, well, they're going to have to catch up somewhere. I hope they would have an understanding that they need to know it somewhere down the road. And I always felt odd with that one, but Missy's the one, because of what she did. When I had a teacher tell me, the first thing out of their mouth was, I would wonder what I did as an instructor. If 40 to 50% of my kids didn't get it or were struggling still with it, what did I miss? As an instructor, what didn't I do, or what could I have done better to meet their needs? And what do I need to do to help them? So when I have a teacher tell me that as part of their process for looking at their students and what they can do, and they put themselves in the mix as an educator, then, man, that person goes up on my chart very fast. Because Missy would do that all the time. What did I do wrong? And sometimes I'd tell her, you didn't do anything wrong. It just, what you did just didn't work for these kids. Or, one time it worked last year. It was successful last year. Why didn't it work this year? You got a different group of kids, Missy. But she would always put herself in that mix, and then it was, okay, what do I need to do? What could I have done? And then she'd take notes for herself. And then she didn't just leave them. She would go back and do that reiteration of instruction, which is what made her extremely successful when she took over the SST. And she actually gave a couple of PD sessions in our faculty meetings telling teachers what they can do in their classes to help kids who they recognized right then and there miss the mark. Because of the experience that she had with SST. So, anyway, but I kind of got off the question there. So I got tenacious, her integrity, and of course her personality. As I told you earlier, she can melt away all your problems. And yet she doesn't have any clue what your problems are, or she doesn't have an answer for you. But just talking with her, you kind of absorb that energy. And so maybe I was a little bit of an energy leech, but sitting there and talking with her, I could bleed that off. But lo and behold, she still had 100%. So I'd still suck it away. She still had it. Her personality was endearing to her students and to her fellow teachers. Everybody loved her because she had, not only did she have a positive attitude, but even when things weren't going well with her, for her, she always spun it to some positive attitude. And people would walk away going, you should be kicking the wall in right now. It's not going to do any good. I got to keep going. I think she found her own energy source with her students. As she got down elbow to elbow with them, that's where she got her energy from. I would see teachers who would sit behind the desk and sadly instruct from behind their desk, or those who would meander from behind the desk and go up to a podium in the front of the room. They would make sure that there was a distance, a physical distance between themselves and their students. A very, very old style of teaching. Missy destroyed that barrier immediately. She would be teaching here, over here, over here. She'd be in the middle of the room. She'd be kneeling down beside some group and pop up and all of a sudden give instructions over here. In an observation, my neck got sore watching her move around the room as she was instructing. It was, I laugh at it now, but it's like, man, I had some of my teachers who needed to learn that, and we started stressing circulation. You know, that you're going to have better contact, you're going to have better discipline with your classrooms if you circulate. We read them articles, we gave them stuff to analyze, we gave them data, we gave the teachers research, and finally those who were a little slower at catching on, come with me. Let's go into Miss Gingrich's classroom and see what she does.